Hello, it's just coming off the tail end of a cold if my voice sounds a little funny. I'm no longer in Japan, I'm now in Malaysia. I no longer have a bookshelf as well, but I do have a nice pile of books still, and that's really what matters at the end of the day, isn't it? However, I'm not going to be talking about this pile of books. I just put them here to show them off and put some color on the screen. Instead, my mind is still in Japan. I may not be physically there anymore, but emotionally my heart is still lingering. And also I had plans about a bunch of Japan themed videos that I wanted to make that I didn't get around to, so that's what's going to happen now. So let's talk about libraries. This time in Japan I went to 3 prefectural libraries. Prefecture is like a state or a county. I went to the one in my old hometown of Fukuoka, which is still a very good library, but I was honestly very disappointed this time. My memories and nostalgia for the past didn't match up to what I went to. You're not allowed film inside, which was the same as before, but what I didn't remember is you're not even allowed to use a laptop inside, which seems, I don't know, pretty barbaric in today's day and age. I guess they don't like the sound of the clicking or something like that when people type. I have no idea. It's a good library. It's just like lots of little things I had good memories of, which just now didn't seem as good anymore. Like the English section didn't have Babel by R.F. Kuang, which really bothered me, because when I was there they had like usually big Western fantasy books, which I think they still do, they just haven't updated their foreign language collection in years. Also, I remember they have this international section for children which has all like these different languages together, and like a kind of a space on the floor where kids can like kind of roll around and also reach up and take up these massive picture books, and I always liked that and thought it was cool. What I hadn't realized and what I noticed this time is that the Japanese children's section is actually in a separate place, and it's much bigger and nicer. I mean, obviously it's Japan, so they've got way more Japanese books, but like, yeah, whereas before I saw it as like making a cool international space for, you know, like parents and their children to go and hang out. Now I looked at it and I was like, this is kind of segregationist, and it's a shame, because like, why couldn't they just make the international place like a little subsection within the children's section? Anyway, well-intentioned, I'm sure. But yeah, that one didn't live up to my memories. The second prefectural library I went to in Japan was in Kagoshima. This one, the first thing that's interesting about it is where it's located. So Kagoshima is this castle town next to the sea, next to a big volcano island that I talked about in my last video. And where the castle used to be, there's just ruins now. They have some of the old walls there, but it's still like kind of geographically, you can get the kind of castle-y vibe, like it goes up like different levels, and that's where the library is. Instead of a castle now, they have the prefectural library, and they have the, what's it called, the museum. The Kagoshima History Museum. So I really like that, because castles are like, you know, it's traditionally the seat of power, and I think the government did actually used to have buildings inside there, but they moved outside of the castle walls now. And if you go into the castle ruins, then that is what you will find. You'll find the public library and you'll find a public museum. So symbolically and like as a feat of urban planning, it's just cool, I think. But the library itself is really old and drab. It's also just not that big. Like, I mean, Kagoshima is not a huge city, so you can't really fault it in that sense. There were 3 treasures I found in it though, which made it totally worthwhile. The first one was a book of photographs of one of my favorite writers, Akutagawa Ryunosuke, and just seeing him at different points in his life through photographs was really nice. I don't know, I'd never thought about it, and I'd never thought that seeing those photos of somebody living in that period in time, the 1910s and 20s, you know, I didn't think that would be so interesting for me, but it actually was. Another one was a really cool looking copy of The Dream of the Celt by Mario Vargas Llosa, the Nobel Prize winning Peruvian author, about the Irish, what was he, human rights activist, like kind of proto-human rights activist, kind of like a human rights activist before such things existed, Roger Casement, who had like a big impact in different areas of the world. He was also super handsome and probably gay, which makes him all the more legendary, but I digress. The third treasure that I found in Kagoshima Prefectural Library was a 4-volume edition of Don Quixote, the first part and the second part, and it was just a work of art. It was beautiful. I only have this tiny little bit of footage that I can show you. I filmed more of it, but like the files got corrupted. A lot of the footage that I took in Kagoshima seems to have gotten a bit corrupted, which is a shame, but anyway, absolutely gorgeous. I think it was dual language edition. Yeah, absolutely beautiful books. Like I felt honored just to have encountered them and held them and know that they exist in the world. In Kagoshima, I also went to another library. I went there a lot more. Like almost every day I went to this library called Tenmonkan Library. It's in a department store. It's much more modern, it's open, it's nice, got a cafe, like basically zero foreign language books, but just a kind of a nice area to work. And my hostel was absolutely rank, so it was just so nice having a place where I could kind of like breathe out and feel at home, and that was Tenmonkan Library for me. But I'm not here to talk about that. I am here to talk about the Prefectural Library, which is not only the best library that I've ever been to in Japan, but probably the best library I've ever been to in the world. And I would be surprised if I ever go to a better library than this one. This is the Ishikawa Prefectural Library. And where to begin? I don't even know where to begin. In Vancouver, Vancouver City Library is also like one of my favorite libraries. The outside of it looks like a kind of spaceship. I said in previous videos, it looks like kind of like a cross between the Roman Colosseum kind of place and a flying saucer. So architecturally from the outside, it looks really, really impressive. But once you get inside, it's like just a normal, nice library with a huge selection of books and lots and lots of floors. And it's like kind of nicely laid out, but it's pretty ordinary. Ishikawa Prefectural Library is kind of the opposite in a way. The outside architecture is nice. It looks kind of like a box with weird kind of folded walls, so that if you stand at different angles you can kind of get different views of like the inside, and the light kind of comes in differently. When you go inside the library, then it becomes like a flying saucer. It's like a TARDIS or something. So it's like kind of, if you took the outside of Vancouver City Library and the inside of Ishikawa Prefectural Library, you would basically just have a spaceship full of books. It's got this huge circular shape, which when you first go in, the first half or first, I don't know, quarter maybe of the circle is not actually in the library. So you have like a cafe and you have workspaces, there's a lecture hall, there's something which is, I forget, like they're called a bookarium, which I think is like meant to be like a planetarium. I didn't take any footage of that either because my camera was out of battery that time. But it's basically like you go into this big dark room and there's these little electronic panels and you can press them and you can like do lots of swiping, and in the black space above you different books appear and you look through the books for recommendations, and it's designed so 3 people can be doing this at the same time, so you can see these like kind of different like books with links, because as you get recommended from one book to the next book, then like it kind of zooms out and zooms in and you see like these little like patterns start to emerge made of book covers on the walls, and it's designed to look, I guess, like a galaxy or something, and it's really pretty. I don't think it's very practical. Also, like if you're with friends, it might be fun to be all searching together at the same time, but if you're with strangers, it would feel, I think, kind of weird that you're doing different book searches, like a library catalog thing, but you're, also creating a sort of mini universe which is interconnecting in the black space around you. I don't know, I think I feel a little bit uncomfortable doing that with like an audience, you know what I mean? But I mean, like, props to them for trying to make, searching through a library catalog into some sort of art performance piece. When you go into the library itself, the circles are not like a tower, but more like kind of concentric circles going out and getting higher as you go. So there is this sense of everything sprawling before you when you're on the bottom floor, because you can see up through the different floors and you can see the bookshelves. As you go through them, you can kind of like wind your way up. It's very accessible. There's lots of slopes and stuff for wheelchairs, or what's it called, prams. Towards the very top, there's a bridge which goes across, which is just really fun to walk on and then look on either side of it. Despite the fact that it seems so open and sprawling when you're walking around, there's also all these little nooks where you can just sit down with your book and a cup of coffee if it's got a lid on it, and little sofas and study spaces and all these little hidden areas that I'm sure I haven't even seen everything that it had to offer. It was really huge. It felt almost like kind of a cultural center as well, because in some parts of the library they had like exhibits like it was at a museum, to do with literature and to do with culture, and especially the row which was most interesting for me was the very, very top kind of crow's nest outer rim of the building was where they have the foreign language books, and you can walk all the way around the circle, and it's not just English. There's an English bit, there's a Chinese bit, there's a Korean bit. They've got all their foreign languages at the very top bit, and I don't know, I really like that. It feels almost like you're in an attic or something like that, but you can look down at everything going on below you. But even in that section, they had all these like exhibits and displays. In between bookshelves there'd be a glass panel, and they would have like one part had penny dreadfuls, for example. Another one had these old Japanese maps, and just like fascinating things. So if you want to walk around around. You're not just looking at books, you're also like kind of absorbing culture and stuff. And in the non-library bits, because you can kind of go through the barrier at different parts of the circle and kind of go outside of the library, there are areas which I guess are like supposed to be more educational for kids and stuff like that. The kids section was also really great. That's kind of like in the bottom and to the side of the circle, and it had like a little playground in the middle of it, like a little castle that the kids can like kind of grab their books and climb into the castle and like do a little bit of climbing as well as reading. And the staff would like very often come around and tell them to be quiet. But that sounds like it could be hell, right? Like for someone who just wants to read or work. That kids section is kind of like almost in a basement-y kind of area. It's like a bit separate from the rest of the spaceship. And they must have some really good soundproofing, because I never heard any of the kids screaming when I was like kind of walking in the main library, and especially not at the top of the crow's nest, you know. So in Kagoshima I had Don Quixote, and my big find in Ishikawa library was Tale of a Castle Keep by Izumi Kyoka, who is a local writer. So it's kind of hard to find his works translated into English, although a lot of them have been. I think his main ones have been. But this library had them because it's like, I guess he's from there, right? And this book, Tale of a Castle Keep, was just gorgeous. It's a dual language. And the way they did it was they had two different artists illustrate the two different halves of the book. So one half is English, like you read from one cover to the midway point in English, and then you flip the book around and you can read from the other cover in Japanese. And the two artists kind of illustrated their respective halves of the book, so you can kind of, even if you don't speak one of the languages, like my Japanese isn't good enough that I could read the Japanese probably, you can just look at all the art anyways, and so it feels like you're getting a lot out of that book, not like you're kind of just throwing away half of it. And yeah, the art really was gorgeous. The binding was nice, the pages felt good in the hand, they were light and crisp, and the story itself was this odd fantasy play, like theater, right? And it gets quite surreal about like this princess living at the top of a tower, and she is like kind of the queen of that tower. She's not the kind of princess in the tower who needs to be rescued. She's the princess in the tower who looks down at the mortal men going about their little wars below them and scoffs, and then plays with like magical goblins and things like that, invites her friends to tea. I'm sure there's like lots of levels of symbolism that went over my head, but I really enjoyed like reading that book in that library, like sitting perched atop of this big spaceship and like looking down at the people going around. I also managed to continue a bit of Babel by Rebecca Kwang, but I no sooner had I read a chapter of it than somebody took it out of the library, and so I just had to abandon that. But I'm kind of glad, because that gave me more time to focus on Izumi Kyoka. I'm just never going to finish that book, Babel, but I've read it in so many different libraries across the earth now that I feel like I don't want to buy it. Do you know what I mean? Also, it's too big to carry around, says the guy who's carrying around all these things. But anyway, currently my favorite library in the whole world is Ishikawa Prefectural Library. Do you know a better one? If so, recommend it to me, or just tell me what's your favorite library. I feel like as I travel, I'm slowly becoming a library aficionado, a connoisseur, if you will. So yeah, please put your international library recommendations down in the comments so that I can continue my global pilgrimage of all the free places that I can like drink coffee and read books. I guess you can't drink coffee in all of them. I'm really excited to find out what the Malaysian National Library has to offer. That is pretty close to where I'm staying now, so I might go there tomorrow even. We'll see. I've been Seb, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!